Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers, and in this video we've got a first run look at the new Adidas Supernova Rise 2. Not a huge amount has changed between this shoe and the first generation, but I've had them on my feet for a few miles, and here are my first impressions of the changes that have happened. So let's get into it. Quick details then, the Adidas Supernova Rise sticks with the same relatively conservative stack, at least by today's standards. The stack height comes in at 36mm in the heel, 26 in the forefoot for a 10mm drop. It weighs in at 9.6 ounce or 272 grams in my men's UK 8.5. Adidas said it has shaved 4% off the weight versus the first gen, but those come in at 9.7 or 275 grams in the test shoe, so I'm not quite seeing that. But coming in under 10 ounces, I would say, sort of keeps the Supernova Rise fairly competitive on weight. Price-wise, things stay the same with the Adidas Supernova Rise 2 coming in at £130 or $140. That's now towards the cheaper end of the daily trainer shelves. To give you a quick shoe whip round, then Adidas pitches the Supernova as a neutral everyday shoe, a starting point daily trainer that could be good as an option for beginners. The updates to the Adidas Supernova Rise 2 are minimal and largely restricted to the uppers, where Adidas has tried to boost comfort and save weight. That includes new mesh uppers, less padding in the heel, though that's quite hard to see versus the originals, thinner tongues and some softer eye stays here. The midsole unit stays the same. It sticks with PEBA-based Dreamstike Plus midsole foam that's made from a small percentage of recycled materials. That Dreamstrike Plus has some of the bounce of a performance foam, but not the full energy of a super foam. There's also a highly rockered forefoot and what Adidas calls its support rod system, a set of visible rods that follow the metatarsals and add some stiffness and spring. Up top, the Supernova Rise has a new mesh upper that's marginally thinner and a little less structured across the toe box. For an upper that's not unlike a Nimbus 26, the heel collars are still really well padded, particularly at the back. There are quite stiff heel counters to enhance the support and heel hold. You've also still got pretty well padded traditional tongues with no gusseting. If you flip them over, there's a generous covering of durable Adiwear rubber, and overall this is a shoe that screams long mile durability. When it came to fit, I ran in my regular Adidas running shoe size, which is a UK 8.5, US 9.5, and I found these fit well true to size. They're not the roomiest shoes, but they're roomy enough, just about enough wiggle room in the toe box. It was easy to lace them up and get them locked in comfortably. Midfoot lockdown was generally good on that first run. The Rise held my foot nicely in place, plus the big padded heel collar secured my heel well and in good comfort with no heel slipping. So based on that first run, I'm going to suggest going true to size in these. So I've just ticked over 4.5 miles, my first run in the Adidas Supernova Rise 2. And in those first 4 miles, I think, unsurprisingly, because the midsole unit is largely the same, or in fact, identical to the Rise 1, not much has changed here. You're getting a very similar ride to the Rise 1. The big change that Adidas talks about really have come in the uppers, where they've changed a few things to the heel package and the tongues, mainly in an effort to make the shoe lighter, but as you see on the scales, it's not a huge amount to choose in terms of the weight, and I don't notice anything on the foot, to be honest. That's not to say these, I don't find them a particularly heavy shoe. I know some people wanted them to offer the ride they offer, but with a lighter package, and that's why Adidas have made some changes, but I'm not noticing anything substantial here from that point of view. So if you already own the Rise 1, I wouldn't say it's worth upgrading to the Rise 2 thinking you're going to get a lighter shoe with the same ride. What you are going to get is the same ride. And when it comes to that ride, this is a shoe that basically packs a more traditional feel underfoot. There's not a huge amount of soft cushioning. There's just enough sort of softness to take the edge off the road, but you will feel quite a lot of ground contact coming up through. I still feel like this is a shoe that I'm going to have to break in. It's felt a little bit firm to begin with. There is a stiffness, and I quite like that. If you like that sort of more traditional ride, you're going to get that with these shoes. Now, having come from the Nova Blast 5 and other shoes like the Super Blast 2, even the New Balance 1080 V14, shoes like that, you know, I think one thing you will notice about the Supernova Rise 2, it's the same with the one, they feel a little bit more compact. It's a little bit less shoe on the foot. There's a bit of a narrower platform, and although they probably feel about the same weight, they don't feel quite so big overall on the foot. But I think for me, the most important sensation that I've got here is kind of an immediacy that comes from the midsole. So this isn't a daily trainer that's going to come with a big stack of soft, bouncy midsole foam. What you're getting instead is a foam that compresses a little, has quite a firm feeling underfoot, and then returns back quite quickly. It's a more kind of snappy and responsive ride It's another of the shoes where I think it benefits best from you picking up your feet quick and you're landing mid to forefoot rather than further back on your heels. And when you're moving at a slightly faster pace, or at least with lighter feet, where your turnover's quick, so you're not actually putting too much energy down into the ground, but you're sort of balancing that. When you're doing that, it kind of softens the overall impact and the shoes kind of come to life. If you're landing a bit heavier and you want to go a bit slow, I find maybe there's not going to be as much cushion as some people are really going to want, particularly at the easier end. I think what's most interesting about that is that Adidas has kind of pegged this as a good shoe for beginner runners who want kind of like a workhorse daily trainer that can do a lot of runs and definitely soak up that 80% of your easy runs. And I think actually in a world where we've got a lot more kind of softness and cushion from shoes that do that for easy runs, I'm not sure that everyone's going to like that. There is an upside to that though. What you've got here is a much more connected ride, and that brings with it a good stability. There's a good reliability to the landings and the way the ride feels underfoot, so it's consistent even if it comes up a little bit stiff and a little bit firm, which I think for some people, particularly if you're looking at running slow and easy, I think a lot of people maybe want more cushion. If you like a shoe with a little bit less cushion, relies a little bit more on fast foot turnover, then I think this could be a good option. The comfort on foot is excellent, heels have held well, fit is good. Overall I find the fit really nice and disappearing. All of that stuff is a big tick in the box. And actually this is the kind of shoe that I don't mind, you know. I'd put it in the ballpark alongside maybe like a Nike Peg 41 or even like a Brooks Ghost 16. Those kind of shoes that, even, you know, I'm thinking about whether or not it's actually like a Kinvara, if it's got that kind of feel to it. Maybe not quite a Kinvara, not quite as direct. There's a little bit more softness and cushion, but it's in that kind of ballpark. It's moving back to that kind of world. So coming up to the 10k mark, close to an hour on feet. I think the way I describe this best, it's like controlled, connected cushion. You are going to feel some of the ground. I think that's probably going to limit how long some people would really want to run in it, but if you can get light foot and you start to clip along and cruise, it copes quite well. But it's going to be for a particular type of running, I think. You know, I think even when you're going slow, you're going to want to land in this with lighter feet, quicker turnover, to really balance out the fact that there's maybe a little bit less cushioning. Flip side of that, it's one of those shoes that I think if you do pick up the pace, there is some potential here for it to go a bit faster. One of those shoes that it'll deliver the fastest, but you're still going to be doing a lot of the work. You can't expect the cushioning to be kind of bounding you forward as it might do in some other sort of daily trainers that try to have a range and a bit of versatility to them. So I've just finished 7 miles, just over an hour. First impressions in this, we'll save a verdict for the full review, but first impressions are, this is pretty much more of the same as you would have got with the original Rise. What I find with that is you've got a connected, comfortable, lightly cushioned, but not really spongy, firmer, stiffer ride that relies more on response and fast turnover for that comfort than you'll find in some kind of bigger cushioned, softer, bouncier shoes. The energy is going to come from you delivering the high turnover. There's a little bit of spring, not a huge amount. It is controlled, it is stable, it's nicely balanced, there's good comfort on the foot. I find the weight okay. I think I'm happy kind of clipping along sort of mid-pace in them. I think if I'm landing too heavy, too far back on my heels, I feel like there's too much ground coming up potentially if I'm like slower and heavier basically. But there's a reliability to them which I quite like, and actually once you kind of just get flowing in them, they will turn over quite nicely, quite well. I feel like with the generations of shoes that we've got coming on now, with a lot of people I speak to, they like to have a bit more cushion. They like to feel a little bit less of the road. If that's you and you don't want much of the road coming up through, I think the Supernova Rise 2 are going to follow the Supernova Rise and being a little bit too much kind of ground feel coming through, and you might want to go for a softer shoe. If you like the sort of slightly more traditional, more direct ride underfoot, then these are going to deliver that, and they deliver it really well actually. I don't mind them at all for that. I like a shoe which has a little bit more ground feel. You know, it's chalk and cheese when you come up to shoes against shoes like the Nova Blast 5 which I've tested recently, or you're even thinking about something like a New Balance 1080 V14 now, which comes in much softer. And as I said on the run there, I put this in the mark of shoes a bit more like a Ghost or even maybe a Glycerin, that kind of area. And yeah, I think you're just going to like to have a shoe that feels a little bit lower stack, feels a little bit more connected to like these. But we will do more testing, obviously, put more miles in them, and we'll bring you the full review once we've done the requisite amount of miles. It's started to rain here, so I'm off back home. So there you have it, that's been our first run look at the new Adidas Supernova Rise 2. Certainly tweaks rather than a revolution in the shoe, pretty much the same as you're going to get with the Rise. But I hope you found that interesting. If you want to hear about the review, our full verdict when we've done the requisite test miles, then don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the bell. If you like this video, hit like. If you think someone else might find it useful, share it. All of that stuff really helps us here on the channel, and we always appreciate you guys stopping by. But until next time, happy running, people.